So I was kind of like of the mindset, if I don't do what he's going to say, what's he going to do? Sack me. I'll just go to another club. That was literally the mindset. And I never thought it was going to happen until it happened.
You always have two choices in life. You have the choice to stay where you are and do the thing that doesn't serve you or suit you, which is probably sometimes a more comfortable thing. Or you have another choice, which is to change something, build something, grow something. And that's usually the more uncomfortable choice. But when you do things that make you uncomfortable, some pretty cool things happen after.
Giving yourself little goals and direction, strategy, looking at the route you want to go on through life. That's the most important thing for me. Because if you don't know where you're going, you can't build where you're at.
Because sometimes we do just have to feel our emotions, and we really have to sit with them, however, we deal with them. But eventually there does come a time when either someone tells you or you have to feel it yourself, and you have to begin to get yourself out of it.
In that moment, when you're in pain, you're in agony, you're lying there, you think the world's ended. When you can have that positive thought, that's strength, that's mental toughness.
Jay, when you hear the phrase, I got back up, what does it make you think and feel?
Straight away, it feels like, for me, of all the times, setbacks, knockbacks, of all the downs that I've had, and then bouncing back up and using that as a positive to take me forward. That's what my career's always been about, really. Knockbacks, setbacks, but then getting up and getting on with it.
I mean, that's what's really interesting, because obviously it's your career, but then also it's everyone's life in a way, when you're consistently, let's say people are knocked down, and it's how do you get back up from falling down?
Yeah, I think, but that's what I feel builds character, builds strength. I've got an 8-year-old son now, and I always say to him, like, he loves football, and I'm like, don't worry about losing the games. Don't worry about losing the challenge. Don't worry about none of that, missing chances. Keep doing it. Keep getting up. Keep getting in that position. And that's what builds character within you. So I think you or I, we wouldn't be the same people if we didn't have them setbacks. That's what gives you growth. So like, I kind of, as I've got older, and now when I look back, I like the fact that I had them setbacks, because it made me into the person I am today.
I always say things like that. I always say, if you haven't been through, look, I know a lot of people would probably change some of the stuff they've been through in life, and I wouldn't wish things on other people, especially what I've been through. But I also do say that sometimes the stuff we've been through, they do make us into who we are, and we don't even know where our future's going to take us. And they only enable and help us become that person as well as we move through life.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think for me, I played for Arsenal, and the way I left Arsenal was in, poor circumstances, really, in terms of I had a bad attitude when I was younger, had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I threw my shirt at Don Howe, got sold. Then reality hit me, because I went to Coventry, and even though they were a Premier League club, Arsenal, everything was done for you. But then reality sets in, and that was an easy moment where I could have just, fell down the leagues. But again, I wanted to prove myself. And every time I took a step forward, it was always a step back. But then when I look at my career in its entirety, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have gone to Coventry. And then if Coventry hadn't have gone into administration, then I wouldn't have gone to Italy, where I met my wife. So that means I wouldn't have had my son. So there's a lot of things that have happened in my life. It just kind of fate, and, I believe in fate. Things happen for a reason.
I say that, and actually about half an hour after my accident, I was lying in the hospital on my stretcher. I'd just come out of the ambulance, and I actually looked up to the friend of mine I was with, and I said, everything happens for a reason.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So in my complete
Yeah.
despair and darkness, and
Yeah.
I was, in shock, this came out of me, and I just went, everything happens for a reason. And they looked at me and they went, can you tell me what that reason is?
Yeah.
And I went, I don't know yet. I'm going to figure it out.
It's funny that, because a few years ago I went to LA on a golf trip, and you get paired in a foursome, and I got paired with this guy, and he had one arm, and I was looking at him and I was thinking, how's he gonna play like golf? It's gonna be a long day, because he's not gonna be able to hit the ball far. And he picked up the golf club, and he hit the ball, and it went so far, and I was like, so like for me being inquisitive on the round, I was like, listen, I just need to ask you, like, how did you lose your arm?
Mm.
And he said he lost his arm in like a sailing accident. The rope tangled onto his arm and just basically severed his arm off.
Mm.
And he said the same thing like you said. He said that he was laying there, his mum come into the accident and emergency and said, listen, are you going to let this define your life,
Mm.
or are you going to make the most of it? And he said in that moment, he just thought, okay, I'm going to get this better, healed, and then I'm going to do everything I can to not let this affect my life.
Mm.
So hearing what you said, it sounds kind of similar, because in that moment, when you're in pain, you're in agony, you're lying there, you think the world's ended, when you can have that positive thought, that's strength, that's mental toughness.
Mm. Well, I believe you always have two choices in life. You have the choice to stay where you are and do the thing that doesn't serve you or suit you, which is probably sometimes a more comfortable thing. Or you have another choice, which is to change something, build something, grow something. And that's usually the more uncomfortable choice. But when you do things that make you uncomfortable, some pretty cool things happen after.
And it feels better as well.
Mm.
Knowing, like, I remember when I was at Wolves, I'm sure we'll speak about this at some point later, but when I was at Wolves, I had the terrible time with Mick McCarthy. The first year or so was good, and then we just fell out. We just butted heads. And then he was trying to break me mentally because he wanted to sell me, but I wanted to go on my terms. He wanted me to go on his terms, and it just wasn't going to happen that way. And then he kind of just put me in exile. Go and train by yourself with a fitness coach. So I wasn't even playing football. I was just running around pitches.
Mm.
Um, and I remember there was a player called Gary Breen, and he said to me, listen, you're never going to play for this club again, but you need to use this as motivation. Get your fitness, get your mind right. And the next club you go to, you use this as motivation to play well for that next club. That next club I went to was Cardiff, and that was the club that I ended up making my England debut under.
Mm.
So that really helped me, but it was a really tough time. Then, like, I don't know, like half a year, like 6 months of training by myself, and it was tough.
And I'm sure the whole time you were thinking, why? Like, why
Yeah,
is this happening to me? And
yeah,
you do start to look more at the downside of things, and you don't always see the light.
yeah. But I mean, it's funny because when I was younger, I even said this to my wife actually. We always talk about this because she kind of looks at things a lot of the time as like the glass is half empty.
Mm.
What I always look at things is the glass is half full. I always like to look at positives
Yeah.
in the negatives. And that's the way I kind of live my life now. And then obviously I bite my tongue a lot more than what I used to. For me, before it was just like someone says something to me I don't like, I'm like, bang, straight back at you. Now I'm like, okay, let me just sit on this one.
I almost want to be like, oh, what can I tempt him with? Can I get him to shout back at me?
No,
It's a
you
challenge.
can't.
So then let's go and start straight where you said about, let's start with Arsenal and
Yeah.
we'll go from there with your
Okay.
life.
No, when I went to Arsenal initially, I was about 11 years old.
Mm.
And I was at QPR first, but my parents had to get me from Archway, where I grew up, to like past Hanger Lane. And it was just too much of a drive. I was always late for training. I could never get there. My mum didn't drive. So it was a case my dad had to like bunk off work almost early to get me to go to training. And I was playing for my district all the time at that point, and my county. And then Arsenal came in for me. A scout called Terry Murphy came and said, listen, we want you to come and play for the Arsenal. So obviously I go to the Arsenal, and it's like down the road. It's like perfect because I can get a bus there. I can walk there. So when I joined, um, it it was an eye opener because Arsenal is more than just like a club. It's like an identity. It's a culture when you go there. And straight away, I kind of felt the family feeling of the club when I went in there. And I was like 11 years old, but then all those players that were there when I was 11 years old, so we're talking about like Steven Sidwell, people like that, we're all friends to this day.
Mm.
And we all grew up from that moment. and we all progressed at that moment. But playing for Arsenal, playing in the youth team, winning the FA Youth Cup, um, they were magical times, experiencing them first things all together, like our first boys' holiday, the first, we all got past our driving test for the first time, nightclubs, like everything.
Yeah.
It was all like first, and it was really special. But for me as a person, when I was at Arsenal, I was just like supremely confident to the point, and I always say this to people, like, to be a footballer, you have to be obsessed with football, but you have to be obsessed in a way. You have to, it's like you're in denial. Like you genuinely believe you are the best. If you don't believe you're the best, you're never going to even reach the Premier League or the Championship or wherever it was. So for me, I was always just like that tunnel vision. I want to be the best. And within that group, there was Jermaine Pennant, Jerome Thomas, Stephen Sidwell, Jeremy Lydia was a bit younger than me, Ben Chorley, Graham Stack, Moritz. Like we had a really good youth team, but all of us kind of thought about it in the same way. David Noble again, like it, it was that culture where we was just like family. It was like brothers, but we was all competing like a lot. And like I would be competing with like Graham Stack, who's a goalkeeper, but it was very much like we just wanted people to talk about us and just recommend us, because back then there wasn't social media. So it was just like word of mouth. When you start hearing people like, oh, this player is really good, I'm like, okay, I need to see him. I want to see how good he is. And when you do play against him, you're like, okay, and now I want to prove that I'm better than him. So that's what it kind of was. But coming up at Arsenal, it was like the best thing. Being from Archway again, being from North London, representing your home, your home club. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially for, representing your home club is like a dream, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And because, I mean, you almost become like, I don't want to say you become well known just because you play for Arsenal, even at youth team level. Because, when it was at Highbury and 35,000 people are going down there, and, in the match day programs, you've got the little bit at the back about the youth team, and, my name's always there, and we're always scoring goals and, winning games and whatnot. And people are starting to talk about you, you're getting pushed up. I was playing in the reserve teams when I was like 15 years old. Now it's a big deal. Like you read about it in newspapers and on social media with these apps, like, but now back then it was like I was playing against men when I was like 15 years old, and it was just normal because the coaches wanted to push you. I think nowadays they protect you a bit more and they hold you back a bit more, like longer. So when you do see the likes of like Ethan Nwanieris and Max Dowmans, they're in the first team, that shows you how good they are, but they're still being held back. And that's very much like what we was like. And I said, apart from the FA Youth Cup, I don't really remember playing that many games in my own age group. I was always playing up. But again, that was character building, because I remember when I was at Arsenal, there was a point when I was playing in my age group and I was just scoring goals all the time, like 4 goals, 5 goals. And I was buzzing because I'm like, this is great. But then there was a coach there at the time. His name was David Court. He actually used to play for Arsenal, a right back in the day. He said, like, this ain't good for you. And I was like, this is great for me. I'm scoring goals all the time. And he was like, no, but you're not improving. And I was like, okay, but if I'm always scoring, like I was trying to justify it. And he said, listen, we're going to start playing you up. You're not going to play in your own age group no more. So like where I went from like scoring five goals a game, now I'm like 1 goal, and then I might not score, and then I might score 2 goals. So it was a lot harder. But I remember those hard times more than them games where I scored 4 or 5 goals, because they were character building, like you said.
Well, they were challenging you each time it was happening.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about. Every time I started getting in that comfort zone where I can deal with this now, like playing a year up, I would push him up another year. Let's see how he does there. And, I remember there was a game we played, you won't remember this either, but we played it in a pre-season game against Southampton, and they brought a team over, and I played in the youth team, probably a year up, Ashley Cole's age group, and we played. I remember playing pretty well, and then someone ran over and said, "Oh, can Jay come and play in the reserves? We've got an injury." So I went and played in the reserves, and it was against Southampton, and there was a defender called Ken Moncal, And I'll never forget him because he was like massive, big, my height, but muscly, strong. And I remember looking at him, I'm thinking, like, he could really throw me around here. I can't use my body like I could with my own age group. And I remember Don Howe said to me, listen, you're not going to be able to bully him. Yeah. How are you going to get the better of him? And how are you going to do well against him to make him not get close to you so he can use his strength? It made me think. The first time the ball came up to me, I tried to kind of like, I I was listening, but I was just like, I need to see for myself.
Yeah.
I went to back in and he whacked me from behind. And back then it was like the first one's always free. You're never going to get a yellow card back then for a challenge. He whacked me like in my side. And I remember I was just on the floor, like winded, couldn't breathe. And then I looked over and Don Howe was like, I told you so. And then after that, I started like playing with my head. It was like going to them little pockets where he doesn't want to go, or, drop deep and then go long, them kind of things, or take him in a wide area. And I ended up having a good game. But again, it was those kind of times that I remember that helped me more in my career than the good times.
And also doing what you did in the way of, you had to do it yourself to then go, okay, that other person was right. Because that's a big thing as well. And I know I do it. Sometimes someone tells me something and I'm like, okay, cool. Cool, registered it, but I'm still going to do what I want. And then at least I've learned, either it then works out and I'm like, see, it worked for me, or then I realized, okay, maybe that other person was right, but I've learned now.
Exactly.
I learned.
That's exactly it. And it's like, I was always that person that I'm never going to just take your word. I need to know for certain. I need to know that you're right. And then if you are, then I'll listen. If you're not, then I'll be like, told you.
That's me.
So like, I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. And then I just want to ask, while we're just here at this point, what was it like being exposed to Arsenal and everything that it came from being as a teenager with all of that?
I could just deal with it because I wanted to be that way anyway. I wanted to be the best in, my district. I wanted to be the best in my county. Then I got called to play for the England under-15s as well, which means I was the best in the country. One of the best, there was, I think, 3 strikers, me, Jermaine Defoe, Leon Knight was there. I wanted to be in that conversation and I was in that conversation. So for me, it was very much like, I know that I'm one of the best now, and it didn't really bother me. Like I didn't feel pressure playing for Arsenal. That was more comfort. It's when I had to go and play for like England where that is a bit of pressure because you're playing against the best players in other countries. Like I remember we played Brazil at Wembley, and there was like 50,000 people in the stadium. You can't help but feel pressure because you're not used to having them fans there. You might be used to like having, I don't know, 50 people standing around the pitch. But then when you go to like play in a stadium and there's 50,000 people, we went to play in Germany, I remember, in a friendly game. I think it was under 15 or 16, and there was like 70,000 people in the Olympic Stadium. And it was daunting because you came out the tunnel and you heard like this massive cheer, and then you look around, it's like, Jesus Christ, it's a full stadium. Playing for Arsenal was just comfort. I loved it. Like I said, I had my brothers there, had my friends there. It was always that place where you go somewhere else, you play badly, you come back, you have a smile on your face because you're back with your teammates again.
Do you think, though, that it might have changed your outlook and mindset as, moving forward in life? Because obviously at the time as well, most other 15-year-old kids are just at school.
Yeah, no, I've actually had that. I remember one time I was like having therapy and the therapist was saying to me, your life seemed like it seemed like you was lonely because you was always traveling, you was in hotels by yourself, didn't really have much of a childhood because, you was so focused on being a footballer. And I said, I didn't feel like lonely because I was doing something I loved doing. Yes, there was times when, my mates were going out partying and, I was like envious. I was like, oh man, I wish I could go. But then I was like, but if I go, I got a match tomorrow and I might not play well in it. So like football always trumped that part, so I didn't really look at it like being lonely or missing out. I always had tunnel vision from a young age. I knew what I wanted to do, like to the point where like I knew where I wanted to live like a young age. Like we used to, yeah, I won't say where I live, but like on the way to the training ground, London Colney, we used to go past this particular area, and I always was like, one day I want to get a house there,
Yeah.
you know. And I was always kind of working toward things in a weird way, and little silly things might motivate me, and I'll give myself goals to motivate myself. You know, look at players that were older than me, players even in the first team that were like in the first team when I was like 16 years old, and I'll be like, I'm better than him now. You know, why am I not playing? You know, kind of thing. That's what I was
Who
like. It
did
was
you think
just,
you were better than?
there was players that I definitely thought I was better than. But like and because we used to train with them as
Yeah.
well. So that was another thing. So like I was one of the first players to go and train with the first team. So like getting a taste of that was like unbelievable, because I was like, okay, I know I'm good. I know that I'm one of the best in the country. But now I'm training with the likes of like Henri, Patrick Vieira, Kanu, Bergkamp, these kind of players. I need to see how good I am against them. But I remember the first time I went over, we was doing like 3v3s or 2v2s or something like that. And I remember like in my mind, I was just thinking, okay, the defenders are top defenders, you know, some of the best. And I was just thinking like, I always want to get a shot off. That's what I was thinking. I don't want to be, you know, like sometimes I was like watching players and they try and get a shot off and they get tackled. So for me, I was always thinking, that's my goal. I want to score some goals. I want to look like I'm meant to be here, not I'm just a person in a bib. So that was like always little challenges I gave myself. But then I always practiced as well, like shooting, especially with my left foot. I was always practicing like whipping things, pings, chips, like everything. I was just addicted to football.
And it's what you just said as well. It's the little challenges we give ourselves that keep us going.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and again, like even now, you know, now I work on television, and you know, I take it seriously. You know, I do my research, I do my notes, I read about a lot now. I even got one of them on my bedside. You know, like the word of the day, and I try and use that word when I go on television, just silly things like that. But like even now, like I take things seriously. Like I play a lot of golf now. Like I practice a lot. I just need something. I need that thing in my life what I can work towards. Otherwise, I end up stagnating, and that's what I don't want to do.
Yeah, you need some sort of purpose still.
Yeah, that's what life is all about, right? I think if you sometimes like in my football career, I was, you know, I did this as well, where sometimes you work, you give yourself a goal, and you reach that goal, and then you don't make another one straight away, and then you end up becoming complacent, and you go back into your old ways. I made that mistake actually at QPR. It was like getting back into the Premier League, and I got myself back into the Premier League, but I didn't give myself another goal straight away, and then you end up wasting a bit of time, and then reality hits you like, shit. Oh, can you, sorry, and then it's like I need to pick myself back up here because I'm falling down the pecking order. So again, like you said there, giving yourself little goals and direction, strategy, you know, looking at the route you want to go on through life. That's the most important thing for me, because if you don't know where you're going, you can't build where you're at to go there. You can't give yourself that platform to go in that direction. So like I said, now, even on television, golf, whatever it may be, I always give myself little targets.
Because you can't become that person that you want to be if you don't have that vision of where you want to take it.
Yeah, like, you know, my mum always said things like, if you if you don't know where you're from, you never know where you're going. And I kind of use that as well. But then if I don't know where I'm at, how do I know I'm going to get to where I need to get to? You know, and I think being self-aware as well is very important in life. Not enough people are self-aware, and not enough people want to be self-aware. That's the reality. People want to hear, people want to hear, compliments all the time. But I always say to my son, listen, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. What you need to hear is not always going to be nice, but what you need to hear is going to be right for you to progress. So that's kind of the advice I give to people now that I speak to, whether it's young football players, my sons. If people ask me for advice, that's the kind of things that I will say to them.
Learning a lot about yourself, whoever you are, is really important. And we don't realize how important it actually is and how lost we can be and how little we actually can know ourselves, because I've been there. And once we start to do things that are more aligned with us or more authentic to us, you really do feel them when they are
Yeah.
right for you.
Yeah. Definitely. You know what? A big thing in my career, Talia, was living in different countries and playing football there, because that shows you a whole nother different way of life culturally. When I went to play in Japan, especially, it's like a whole nother different culture. It's just not the Western way at all. It's all about respect, um, you know, being calm, focusing on what you need to do. It's not all about me, it's about we. All them kind of things where playing football in Europe, a lot of the time you have to be kind of even though you're playing within a team, you're selfish still. There's selfish parts every day because you're looking, I want to play. You're, there was that thing recently with Jude Bellingham and Morgan Rogers about who's going to be number 10, and they're sitting next to each other talking, and they're saying all the right things, but in their minds they're saying, I want to play. And if he plays ahead of me, I'm going to be pissed off, because that's just the way it is. That's just competition. But going to play in Italy, initially, that was an eye opener, because that just, for me, I was always focused on the football, but then away from the football pitch, I wasn't focused in terms of, I'll go and get Kentucky, I'll go and eat a Chinese and things like that. When I went to Italy, it was like, no, you got to eat healthily as well. You got to get your rest in as well. You can't be having late nights. So that gave me another, way to think about, how I can go forward and be better as a football player. But going to Japan at the end of my career was an eye opener, because it's a different lifestyle. Like they live just completely different. Like going in the bath, having a bath, and then having a sauna in the morning, having a cold bath and a sauna at night. Just little things. The way they eat, how clean everything is, how respectful they are. Just the little details that help me grow as a person. So I always say to I've got a 23-year-old son and an 8-year-old son, and I say to them, if you ever get the opportunity to travel and do something you love doing, like your career, do it, because it's the best thing for your growth as a person. Because when you see the way other cultures live and act and the things they do, on a day-to-day basis, it can help you see if you want to have that in your life, if that helps you. So for me, before I went to Japan, I would still describe myself as a bit of a hothead. But then when I come back from Japan, I was a lot more like placid, like, yeah, that's not going to really bother me. I just let it go over my head. Whereas before, if certain things would be like, bang, bang, I'd fire back at you straight away. After I came back, I was just like, yeah, no, even with my wife, she might be saying stuff to me and I'll be like, okay.
She's like, wow,
Yeah, I
what's
know. She'd be like,
happened? Go
what's happened
back.
to him? Yeah, she'd be like, what's happened to him? He's not reacting. That makes me more angry, So it changes you. And I think that's the beautiful thing about going around the world and seeing different cultures. It helps you understand the way different people live. And it makes you self-aware about who you are as well. And I think that's what you need to do in life. Again, it gives you life lessons.
You do. You take little nuggets from places, people, wherever you go in the world.
Yeah.
It's like a big mosaic. You take little pieces from everyone and everything that makes you you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, as well, people you meet, they're important. Like when you have like real deep conversations with people that, come from other industries, live a different way. Again, that can only help you, because when I read things, and now we're lucky because you get to see all these, podcasts, and you hear people speak, successful people that have been through tough times. I end up taking little bits and bobs from these experiences these people have had, and I try and put it into my own life to make it better. Sometimes it does, and then other times it's like, didn't really work for me. But at least you've tried something and you've learned that it doesn't work for you.
And that's actually a really important point to note, because you can try something 100 different times and it's just not working, but someone's told you it might work like this, like this, like this, and you can try everything for everyone. And then sometimes it's that 101 time that thing works for you.
Yeah.
And it can be from lots of different people that you've discovered this way, whatever it might be. And that is sometimes, it's why also it's like you shouldn't give up, because it doesn't matter how long something takes you. If you keep trying it in however many different ways possible, if it's for you and you want it enough, you'll get it.
Yeah.
However it's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I say that to, like, I do, I've got a little grassroots football team now as well. So, you know, big up top ballers. Um, but I want to give back to North London because
Yeah.
football gave me a lot. And I love North London. I love where I'm from. But again, I always say to them, you know, you can't dwell on the past. You have to look at things and take the bits you like, but look at the bits you don't like as well, you know, and learn from them bits and learn from them bits quickly, because those are the bits that can be your downfall. You know, if you start getting yourself into a point where, like, and I was one of those kids where, like, I thought I knew everything. I didn't want to listen, but that come, Talia, because I was so good at a young age. So I was kind of like of the mindset, if I don't do what he's going to say, what's he going to do? Sack me. I'll just go to another club. That was literally the mindset. And I never thought it was going to happen until it happened.
Yeah.
But I always say to them now, you always just got to think of positive things, try and take the good from every situation. That's what's going to help you build your character. You know, let's be honest, most of these kids that play grassroots football, whatever it may be, they're not going to be footballers. You know, I think there's only like 4 people from Islington that I know of that's actually made it to the very top since I've been on this planet, you know, and that in terms of like all the players that have actually tried to do that, it's hardly anything, you know. So that's the reality. But I say to them, this football, it can give you a lot of good life lessons, which is, you know, discipline, having that self-belief, you know, giving 100% every day. Because if you give 100% every day, that hard work ethic can sometimes, most of the time actually, be better than ability. I'll take hard work. Now looking back at it, you definitely take hard work over ability. If you've got both, you're going to be a top player. But you see in the Premier League, there's plenty of players that are just really hard working players. They're good, but they're really hard working. The ones that have supreme ability, they're the ones that don't have a good work ethic, and they're the ones that filter down quickly. So again, hard work over everything, and self-belief.
And then how old were you when you left Arsenal?
So I was like 18. Yeah, I was 18. But again, it was that conversation. I was just like, in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to leave Arsenal, but I'm one of the best strikers in the country. I'm young. Someone's going to want to sign me. And I did have offers. And it was Gordon Strachan at the time, who was a Coventry manager. And he called me up and, you know, he said, I'm Gordon Strachan. And I was like, who? You know, and he was like, Gordon Strachan, Coventry City manager. And I was like, oh, Coventry, Robbie Keane plays for you lot, innit? And he was like, yeah. Because Robbie Keane to me was a player that I looked at and I thought, he's a serious player. Great skill, great dribbling control, great finisher, great movement. So he was someone I looked at and thought, yeah, I like him as a player. So when he told me that he wanted to sign me, I was like, let's go, man. I want to do this. I got to Coventry and then literally started pre-season. 3 weeks later, Robbie Keane got bought by Inter Milan. Never played with him. So I was just like, that was a bit of a bummer. But again, I think in the early years, it's hard navigating your way through life, especially at that moment when I went to Coventry, because I moved to Coventry. My family was in London, so I moved there by myself. And then being by myself all the time, having to try and be professional by myself, it's really hard, especially coming from a city like London where everything is just there. I could walk out and I could go into town on a train and be there in like 10 minutes. Like being in Coventry, nothing's really there. It's not a major city. So it was hard to adapt to that. And my friends would come up and spend time with me, but it was never the same as being in London. But that point probably was the most difficult point I had up to that point when I left Arsenal.
Why?
Just because I had no one to rely on.
Mm.
I didn't have that safety blanket of my mum where I could go home and say, Mum, can I have some dinner? Or Mum, can you do this for me?
Mm.
Like my washing, all them little things that you take for granted, I had to now do. And it was hard because I was a mummy's boy, man. I ain't gonna lie, I was getting bathed until I was about like 8 years old, 9 years old, and I had the bubble bath there. My mum used to sit there and talk to me, but going then to have to do it by myself,
Yeah.
again, it was an eye opener. Like, you sink or swim. I've never ironed a t-shirt before. I've never done none of these things, but I had to learn.
You had to learn how to run a bath.
I had to learn how to run a bath. Exactly. All these things that I had to do for the first time. But it is tough when you move out your comfort zone, which was London, which was Archway, moving out of that comfort zone and then going to a different city where you don't know nobody. Yes, you walk into a change room straight away and you've got like 30, 40 people in that environment, but you don't know them. You haven't grown up with them. You don't know who you're going to get on with. You've got to make friends. You've got to kind of hit the ground running as a footballer, especially because I got bought for a few million. You come with like a price tag. You've got to hit down and say, well, this is why I'm worth that kind of money.
And that can be hard at any age,
Yeah.
whoever you are going into an environment like that, but especially at such a young age as well.
Yeah. Like I remember like being in the newspapers and things like this from like a very young age. But I didn't look at it like that. And I remember that there wasn't social media then as well. So, I mean, I can only imagine what it's like now for these young people. Like, I mean, even like their parent, I see a lot of things now where I'm like, what are you doing? Like, these kids are like posting on Instagram and getting thousands of followers and it looks great. But in reality, they're not going to make it. That's just the reality. And it's hard to swallow sometimes. But back then for me, there was a lot of talk, and I remember like when we talk about it now, it's funny. Like when I talked to like Joe Cole was in my district team, and Jermaine Defoe again, under 15s England. When I talk to people like them, we always say that it was very much like you hear loads of things before you play against that player. So when you do get the opportunity to play against that player, you're thinking, okay, I've got to perform because I want to show I'm better than him. It's not even about the result of the team. It's about I want to show I'm a better player than him. So it was just very much that way. But pressure didn't really get to me. Pressure was always motivation for me. And that's the way I always look at it. Like some of the best performances and some of the best times of my life came when I was under real pressure. So I always kind of embrace that. I don't feel like I've really ever had proper stress where I've had sleepless nights because I always had football and I always look at the positives. And that's what I try to say to anyone that's around me. I've got a close circle around me, and that's the kind of advice I like to give to people.
And then what happened next after Coventry then?
So Coventry had a good period, but Gordon Strachan got the sack. Then some other managers came in. But the last manager I had at Coventry was Gary McAllister, and he was player manager, and he was really good. And that was the next player that I was like, wow, like I'm going to be playing with Gary McAllister. He's a proper player. And then he came in, and straight away you could just see that he was just like another level. And I remember playing well. At the time, when I was young, I wasn't playing as a striker. I was playing like right wing and left wing because the way when you used to play, when I used to play one up front, I didn't have the physicality because I hadn't filled out at that point. I was just like tall but skinny. So I couldn't play against like them big kind of meathead defenders that just want to whack you. And I couldn't play against them. So like they ended up putting me in the wide positions where I could run at you. I could, have shots from outside the box, and try and get the best out of myself from there. But Coventry went into administration, and I remember it was around the time that I was having my first son, and they said to me, "Would you take a 30% deferral?" And I was like, what's a deferral? Because you remember, I'm young as well. Like, I've got no idea about saving money. I've got no idea about investing. I've got no idea about none of that. I was like, what's what's a deferral? And he was like, well, basically, we're going to take 30% off your wages. And when we get our club back into a better position, we'll give it back to you. And I was like, okay. I said, am I definitely getting the money back though? And he was like, well, and I was like, well, if I'm not definitely getting it back, then I can't do it because I need that money. Um, so I said to them, listen, obviously your hands are tied. The club's in and I say me, like my agent as well, your hands are tied. You know, the club's not in a good financial position. If you give me a free transfer, you won't have to pay me and I can leave on a free. So it can potentially work out as a win-win. And they came back to me a few weeks later and they said, yeah. And that's when I ended up going to Italy. Um, and I only wanted to go to Italy because at that particular time, Serie A was like the best league in the world. All the best players in the world were there. And I was just like, me and my dad used to watch Football Talia on Channel 4. And we always said that if I had the opportunity to go and play in Italy, I should go. And then I got that opportunity. So I was like, I'm going.
Do you know what I really like about you is that there's lots of things that you like idolize, and they've given you that fuel and that passion and that energy to pursue them.
Yeah, definitely. Like when I put my mind to it and I'm focused on something, I'm gonna get it. It's just how long it's gonna take for me to get it. But I'll get there. And that's the way I do everything now. Like once I set my eyes on something and set my brain that I want to do this and I want to achieve that, I will go and do it. Going to Italy though was probably the hardest thing I ever did. So like going to Coventry was one thing, being alone. Going to Italy was a whole nother level because I went there and when I signed for Perugia, I joined up with the team that was like doing preseason in the mountains. And like it was a small village, kind of like just off the grid. And I went there and all the foreigners that played for that team at the time, they all had extra time off. So I was the only person that could speak English in that team at that point. Nobody else was there. So I was like, and you know, back in the day, it was like you had your phone, but a phone call from Italy to England was like about £5 a minute. It was expensive. So I remember like I called my mum. I was like, Mum, I can't. Like after a few days, I was like, I don't know if I can do this, man, because I can't communicate with people. Like football is one thing, but after football, speaking to people, I couldn't speak to no one, and I felt homesick. My mum was like, just don't worry, it's gonna get better. And the football was going really well, to be honest. The preseason, I had a good preseason. But then Sadi Gaddafi came, who's Colonel Gaddafi's son. And that's how we became friends because he was the only one that could speak English. So I was just always with him, like we'd just go for lunch, we'd do all these kind of things together. But I just felt homesick because I couldn't speak to no one, which means I couldn't go out. You know, I was pretty much a single guy in another country. It was just like hard to navigate, understand the culture, play football at the same time, try and make friends with people. How can you make friends with people where you can't even speak to each other? You know, started doing Italian lessons. Things started getting, you know, a little better. But yeah, my best friend flew over, like tried to come over like once a month or something like that. But it was just really, really hard. That was the one time where I look back at, I was crying myself to sleep, like loads, where I was just like, this is really tough. Just felt like real homesick. But again, it was one of those things where the season started and we played Siena in the first game of the season. And I remember thinking like, this is Serie A now. Like normally I was like playing, you know, on FIFA, using AC Milan in Serie A, you know, with them kind of like wonderful players they had, like Kaká, Pirlo, all these kind of people. And I remember walking out for the first time against Siena and it gave me goosebumps because I came out and I've never seen flares being thrown on the pitch. I've never seen smoke like this. You couldn't see the other goal. It was so much smoke and it was like an unbelievable atmosphere. And then at that point when I was walking out, I was like, this is why I came here. Like now I understand. And then obviously now I started building goals in my head. You know, I want to make myself, you know, regular, because I'm still 21 years old. You know, a 21-year-old now, you get opportunities until you're like 25 years old, you know. Whereas back then, you had to really earn, like you had to really earn. Like now, players get given contracts based upon potential. They get given a lot of money based upon they could potentially be good. Whereas back in my day when I was coming up, you had to really earn your contracts. You know, you couldn't just play well for 6 months and get a new deal. You had to play well for like a year and a half before you got a new deal. So like me being in Italy now, mixing it with some of Serie A's best, some of the best ever players, to be honest, was a real eye opener.
And it's interesting as well because you were saying, obviously, you're following your passion, you're following your love, and you know you want to play football. But there was the loneliness that came with it, and there was the other side that no one else was seeing. And I think a lot of people go through that now.
Yeah,
People can look at someone, whatever they're doing in life, and they can think that everything is amazing because of whatever they're achieving or you know
yeah,
whatever they're doing. But there can be a very different side that no one else knows.
yeah. And that's the thing. Like with football, I think, especially, you know, especially football, fans just think, you know what, he's earning 50 grand a week. What's he moaning about? I'm going, you know, I'm driving a lorry. You know, I got to wake up at 4 in the morning. Like, and yeah, footballers earn money, but at the end of the day, you know, we're all human, right? And when you walk off the football pitch, no one knows what you're going through afterwards. You know, everyone knows it's difficult and it's hard to lose a football match because no one wants to lose them, but you're going to lose them, right? So you can kind of prepare yourself for that. I mean, when it's the biggest games like the Champions League final or the league that we just won. By the way, how's it feel being a champion?
Yeah, it feels
It
great.
feels
How's
good,
it feel
doesn't
for
it?
you?
Yeah, it feels good to me. But yeah, no, it's difficult. So as much as I was enjoying life on the pitch at that point now, because I've just put my mind to it, I'm just going to get on with it. Life off the pitch was still hard, you know. And people don't, I don't know if it's if they don't want to understand, but it's just difficult for them to digest because footballers really, when you break it all down and look at the basics of our career, we're going out into a field playing football with our friends every single day. That's why I always say it's the best job in the world because you're doing something you love doing. And I always say to people now, you'll never get the absolute best out of yourself unless you're doing something you love doing. So if you can do that, you know, even if you can't right now, even if you're just doing a 9 to 5 job, start thinking about a way you can do something you really love doing so you can get rid of that 9 to 5 job, which is just, you know, making ends meet and try and do something you love doing. You know, that's the way you can enjoy life at the same time.
And then with that in mind, like you said before, if you want something in life, you will go after it. I'm like that as well. I'll tear
At all
anything,
cost,
anything to get to it. I'll cross oceans literally. But you don't always know how, and you don't always have a time frame, and that can be the hardest part because you can literally be banging your head against a wall going, why is it not happening now? So how do you get through that part?
Well, that was actually in my earlier life, that was a lot of my challenges because I didn't want to listen and I didn't know how to navigate through life. I didn't have like a mentor that I would look at. And in football, there's a lot of snakes. Yeah, you know, I had some good agents, I had some bad agents. But it's just like trial and error, isn't it? And for me, again, I had to kind of learn on the job. And learning on the job isn't easy because you'll probably make more mistakes than you make more bad decisions than good decisions. And that's why I always kind of had a reputation for a bad boy and he's rude, he's arrogant, he's this, he's that. But no one really knew me. And the people that do know me and see the real me, I think probably would have a different opinion of the way I am. I mean, it was only yesterday I was chatting to Wayne Bridge and he was like, he said, before I met you, I thought you was a fucking idiot. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, nah, just the way you carried yourself on the pitch. And I was like, Yeah, but you're meant to be a certain way on the
Yeah.
pitch. You know, they tell you like the person that walks on the pitch is completely different to the person that off the pitch. And I said, that's what I was like on the pitch. You know,
Yeah.
I moaned and I was a certain way, but yeah, it was very much a different person to the way I was off the pitch. But that's just the way I kind of grew up,
Mm.
just not listening. I think nowadays younger players have a lot more support, which I
Mm.
think is fantastic. You know, if you're going through tough times, you can go and speak to someone. You can go to someone. Whereas early on my career, if I was to go to one of the senior players and start trying to open up to that player, they'd be like, that's, they'll look at me and it'd be like a sign of weakness that I've
Mm.
gone to them. You know, you didn't have that person that you could go to and confide in, because it was like, you know, a dog eat dog world.
Mm.
You know, sink or swim.
Mm.
And I didn't feel like I wanted to be honest. I didn't feel comfortable going to someone and, you know, saying, you know what, I'm going for a tough time. You know, what can I do better?
Mm.
I just didn't want to do that. I just used to like suck it up and just try and get on with it, put it to the back of my mind. Like even now, I have conversations, you know, there might be things that bother me, but I just put them to the back of my mind and say, you
Mm.
know what, I'm just gonna let that one go.
Mm. And I think whoever you are, it doesn't matter what gender you are, that can be difficult. You don't always want to open up about things. You don't always want to talk about
Yeah,
things.
definitely.
But as a woman, obviously sitting here, I'm going to ask you as from a male perspective, and then you were saying, obviously, again, growing up, with some of the older players, was it difficult then? Was it an environment where you really, if you did want to speak to someone, you felt you couldn't?
Yeah, 100%. I never thought I could speak to anyone about everything. And, you know, even with my epilepsy, you know, I had epilepsy from the age of 18. Not many, from 18 to when I finished, there'd probably be a handful of people that knew. And they were probably doctors because I had to
Mm.
get the medication. But I didn't feel like I could go to someone and say, listen, I've got this condition and this is why I can't train today, or this is why I can't play on the weekend. So I always just like sucked it up and I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna get on with it.
Mm.
I'm gonna do these things. I know I have a condition, but I'm just gonna deal with it. I'm gonna get on with it. And there was a lot of there was a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have done, having epilepsy as a condition, but I did. And you know, I remember the doctor said to me when I first got diagnosed with epilepsy at 18, um, he told me I've got epilepsy and you're going to have to take these tablets every day, twice a day. And I was like, listen, can I die from this? And he was like, no, not unless you have a seizure next to a swimming pool or a cliff or something like that. I was like, cool. And I just left. I literally just discharged myself, walked out, and then I was playing football like a few days later. But there was times when I would like not sleep. And when you don't sleep and you have epilepsy, that's like a trigger. Because if you exhaust your body, there's a chance that you could have a seizure, especially my
Mm.
my strain of epilepsy. Um, so I was dealing with a lot of these things, living by myself. You know, I had to not only deal with just everyday life, I had to deal with my condition as well, and I just didn't feel comfortable telling people about
Mm-hmm.
it. The only people that knew about it was my loved ones and my best friends that see me have a seizure for the first time in my friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard. But again, fans, people that don't know me, they don't know what I go through
Mm.
on a day to day. You know, they just look at me on the football pitch and they look at the way I am. They might look at my facial expressions. They might see me swearing. They might see the way I speak to other people and they just think, you know what, he's an idiot. He's this, he's that. But I always say, you know, it's an old saying, it's an old cliche, don't judge a book
Mm.
by its cover. And it's absolutely right. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, you never actually know what's really going on, in someone's life, in their mind. You just
Yeah.
don't.
No, exactly. And do you know what you said there when you said, you know, you never really listen. You want to try things for yourself to see if it's right or wrong. It's the same when meeting people. You might say to me, oh, that person's an idiot. But
Mm.
then I go and meet them and I'll be like, oh, I actually really like that person. I think
Mm-hmm.
they're cool. You know, it's just different. And for me, like I can't even imagine. like going up to, you know, one of them Arsenal players, or when I went to Coventry, one of those players saying, listen, I've I've got epilepsy. There's sometimes I feel tired. There's sometimes I don't feel up to it. Can you just give me a bit of leeway? They'll just look at me and it's like, I can just imagine it. That's why I was just like, you know what? Let me just keep it to myself.
Why do you think though? Why?
Again, I just think at that time in the English game, I think
Mm.
it was just more cultural. It was more, you got to be mentally tough.
Mm.
Otherwise, you're never going to get to the top. Um, and I feel like if I had have gone to them, that would have shown, this is just my thought,
Mm-hmm.
it would have shown an element of weakness
Mm.
from me. And I didn't want to show that element of weakness to anyone. I wanted to like just navigate through my career, do as best as I can do. But there was times when I played, I had seizures, and like, I didn't tell nobody. And I went and played a football match. I can't even remember the football match. Like, but I just got on with it
Mm.
because football was my love, my true love, that I always wanted to do that. Nothing was going to stop me playing football. No
What?
condition.
Yeah. What form of epilepsy do you have?
You know what? I've heard the name, but I forgot it. It's gone from. I knew he was going to ask me that as well. It's like I forgot the strain, but basically, for me, it's not like lights that affect me.
Mm.
It's more exhausting my body, lack of sleep. If I was to drink alcohol, that's why I don't really drink that much alcohol, and then not taking my tablets, that would make me really susceptible to having a
Mm-hmm.
seizure. But again, when you're young and irresponsible, I'd like wake up and I'd be in a rush and I'd forget to take my tablets, and then I might go home that night and be like, oh, my tablets are there, let me just take it now, that kind of way. Um, but I think when you have a condition, you have to like really, really be responsible about it. That's why when I speak to people now with epilepsy, I say to them, the most important people to you is your close friends and family, your girlfriend, your brother, your sister, someone that knows you have it. You need that support system around you that can be there and help you when you need it. If you're by yourself and you're not sharing it with nobody, it's going to be really hard for you.
Mm. How was it navigating epilepsy and then football all at the same time?
Again, because it's funny because I knew that my football was everything.
Mm.
I just got on with it, Talia. I didn't give it a second thought, really. The only time I gave it a second thought is when I knew that I wasn't quite feeling right or I'd had a seizure. That's when I would be thinking about it, thinking, no, I can't have a seizure on the pitch. That's the worst thing. I can't do that.
Mm.
And I never had a seizure on a football pitch, thankfully. Um, but there was times when I'd go to games, and it's hard for me to explain, but basically when I feel like I could have a seizure, I start feeling like a bit slow. Like
Mm.
you might say to me, what's your date of birth? And I'll be like, 7th of the 5th, 82. Like it'd take me a while to come back to you rather than just,
Mm.
that's something you just know. You
Mm.
just come straight back with someone with the answer. But when you're about to have it, you have this kind of feeling of kind of black dots behind your eye, and then your brain is not functioning efficiently. So you're coming back with slow answers. Um, and it, it's hard, and it's hard to deal with, but I'd sit there sometimes in the changing room getting ready for the game thinking, I don't feel great, but I know I got to play
Mm.
because I want to win and I want to play football. And then after the game, it's very much like, okay, now my body's exhausted. I really am susceptible. I got through the game, but now I got to have a good night's sleep. So then midweek games that we had, when you've had like loads of like Powerade or Lucozade, whatever it is, and you're like charged, your adrenaline's still going, and I'm sitting there in bed and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and I can't get to sleep.
Mm.
And then I've got to wake up in the morning to go and do a recovery. They're the days where I'm like worried
Mm.
because there's a good chance that I could have a seizure, which is, it's now having epilepsy in football. I would definitely have the support and I wouldn't mind going to speak to people. But then there was just no chance that I was going to, show vulnerability
Mm.
to my peers and say, listen, I need help.
Mm.
I don't, I'm not going to listen. Having mental health issues in sport, in any walk of life, is difficult to navigate. I don't know if I had mental health issues. I don't think I did, but I definitely had a lot to deal with mentally,
Mm.
you know, and that was my thing that I wasn't willing to tell other people about.
And do you think that vulnerability and that speaking out, do you think it would have made you seem weaker?
Yeah, yeah, it would have made me feel more exposed.
Mm.
And as well, like I didn't want, like there's one manager that knew I had epilepsy. That was Dave Jones when I was at Cardiff. Um, and you know, he would always say to me, "Are you all right? Have you taken the tablets?" But even then, because he knew and he said to me, "Have you taken?" Like that would upset me. I'd be like, "Yes, I have." That would frustrate me.
Yeah.
Like even with my wife, like she'd be like, "Have you taken your tablets?" And I'd be like, it started to frustrate me. So that's probably another reason why
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell many people, because I didn't want these people saying to me, "Have you taken the tablets, Jay? Have you had an early night?
Mm.
Have you done it?" Like, I just didn't want that. I didn't want that. I didn't like it. Even now, I don't like it. But now, obviously, I'm older. I'm responsible. I've got like tablets everywhere. Everyone's got tablets in their
Yeah.
bags, in my golf bag, in my cars. So now, obviously, I can deal with it a lot better.
It's sad as well because people still think speaking out and being vulnerable is like a weakness,
Yeah.
and it's just not.
I mean, and that's the thing. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. But people find it hard to
Yeah.
talk, and that's what I always say. You know, you got you got to be brave and talk to people. You know,
Mm.
that's what it is. You know, and you know what? 9 times out of 10, you talk to someone, you're gonna feel better afterwards.
Mm.
You know, so I always encourage that, and again, I always encourage the support system. At the end of the day, especially your family, they're never gonna judge you. They're gonna love you. It's unconditional love, family. And your best friends. It's unconditional love all the time. So, you know, you have to look at those people as a support
Mm.
system. If you don't want to go to the people like in
Mm-hmm.
football, if you don't want to go to them, you need to go to your support
Mm-hmm.
system, which is your friends and family.
100%. And that's actually a really important point because it's like, obviously, there are therapists out there which are amazing, and there's so many different ways you can talk to people. But if you don't want to do something like that, then find someone in your close support network,
Yeah,
whether it's someone, whether it's a partner, whether it's a family member, whether it's a close friend, and know that they will listen and they
yeah,
will be there for you and they will hold your hand through things because they love you. And if you
yeah.
love them, they love you. It's how it works when you have these people in your life.
Exactly. And, you know, even that time I told you about when I was, you know, crying myself to sleep at night, you know, I actually did at that point call my best friend and I was
Mm.
speaking to him and I was like telling him, and he was like giving me the kind of tough love, let's say.
Mm.
Tough love. Because I remember he said to me, like, if you come back now, people are going to look at you and say, you know, you went over there, you wasn't strong enough to deal with the
Mm.
living away, and, you know, they will kind of look at you as a failure. And it's like I needed to hear that at that time.
Mm.
Whether it was right or wrong, I felt like I needed to hear that
Yeah.
because that's what spurred me on. That was my motivation then. You know, when I'm this person as well, like someone tells me I can't do something, I'm going to prove you wrong. You know, that's the thing. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to do it. And that's the way I've always been. But again, like when we talk about mental health and any condition you may have, if you don't feel comfortable speaking to a stranger, whether it be
Mm.
a therapist or someone, you know, at work or at your football club that you might play for, you have to turn to your friends
Mm.
and your loved ones and your family. They have to be that support. So that's why I always say them that those. I mean, for me, my circle is very small. I don't trust many people, and you know, the people I do trust, they know, and
Mm-hmm.
they're the people I turn to and I ask advice for, because I don't feel vulnerable at them. Most people know I mean, they know everything about me.
Mm.
And if I have something on my mind, you know, it might not even be my wife that I want to turn to and speak to about that particular
Mm.
situation. It might be one of my best friends or a certain friend that I know have been through something like that, that I'll turn to and I'll go to him and say, "What do you think about this? This is the way I'm feeling." But I'm open to doing that now. Like I don't care what people think of me. You know, you don't have to like me, fine,
Mm.
no problem. You know, when I speak to certain people They're on social media, and they've spoken about, you know, some of the abuse they've got on social media. It's terrible. It's terrible. But for me, I've always been one of them people that don't bother me because you don't know me. You know, if you don't, you know, you didn't make me, so you can't break me. You know, that was kind of like what my dad used to say to me. You know, don't let people you don't care about upset you. Stay focused. Be strong. Prove them wrong. You know, my parents did give me some good advice. I didn't always listen in that moment, but now when I'm older and I look back,
Yeah.
I feel like it was good advice they was trying to give me.
Yeah, and you learned from it.
Yeah, yeah. In the end.
In the end.
In the end.
Sometimes it might take a little while, but in the end.
In the end.
And you know, you never let the epilepsy destroy you. You never let
No.
it turn you away from football in your dreams, because that's a choice in life. When you're going through whatever you are in life, sometimes things like this can come up and they can change the whole course of your life.
Yeah.
And then you get two options. Are you going to let it destroy you and you're going to be a victim to this thing? Or are you going to go, okay, whatever's going on is going on. I'm going to go with it and keep pursuing my dreams.
No, exactly. I just said to myself, you know, this condition is not going to define me. You know, nothing is going to stop me achieving my dreams. Like absolutely nothing. You know, loved ones, friends, whatever it may be, nothing was going to deter me from achieving my dreams. And you know, when I was a kid, you know, let me just be clear. My dreams when I was a kid, you know, play in the Premier League, you know, play for my country one day, play in Europe. They were my dreams and I achieved all of them. So I think my attitude as a kid and in my early 20s made it difficult for me to achieve my dreams at the highest heights on a consistent basis. But nonetheless, I still got to achieve everything I set out to do in the beginning. That's why I always say now, like, I think every young player, person even, they need a mentor. They need someone they can turn to when they're going through a tough time in their life, in their jobs, in their careers, where you can speak to someone and have that much respect for that person, where they can speak to you in a certain way, even if it can be sometimes degrading. I mean, I had that. One of my agents that I had, and you know, I'll say his name actually, Sky Andrew. He was my agent when I was at Wolves, and I remember he came to my house and he said to me, "You're underachieving, and to be honest, you should be embarrassed." He said, "Because you live in a big house, you've got cars, you've got all these things, but you're underachieving in football. And if you carry on this way, you're going to be looked at as a person that's wasted his ability. What are you going to do about it?" And in that moment, it was like, fuck, who's this guy talking to? You know? But then I thought about it and I went upstairs that night and I remember I went to sleep early and I thought, that was painful, but he's right. And that moment when I think I was about 25 or 26, that was the moment where I said, okay, from this moment, I'm going to knuckle down again and get back to the basics, which is loving football. That feeling, that thought process of trying to get that first pro contract, get back to the basics. And that's what I did. And he really helped me. And he helped me, you know, become a full international. He helped me get back to the Premier League. So credit to him for speaking to me that way, because not many people would.
And then you also mentioned your time at Wolves.
Yeah.
There was a moment where, you know, people were trying to break you down mentally.
Yeah. Again, it was one of those things where, like I said, Gary Breen was key for me. Sky Andrew was key for me. We used to, like, me and Gary, we used to go to training together sometimes when I was in the same time as him. But we used to go out and have dinner together because we didn't live far from each other. But he was always a person I could, like, kind of go to and speak to about football, about, you know, I'll be like, man, he done this to me the other day. He said this to me. What do you think I should do? You know, that kind of thing. And he always gave me, you know, good advice. Sometimes it was things that I didn't want to hear. But like I always say, the people that love you the most are going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. The people that care about you the most, they tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. I don't ever want yes people around me. I just don't, because in that moment, yeah, they can put a smile on your face, but do they really have your best interest at heart? I'm not so sure. I've had bad experiences with yes people and people that try and please you. So like for me, it's the people that have given me the tough love that are mainstays in my life.
But then with tough love, sometimes when you're getting tough love, that person really loves you, because
Yeah.
if they feel that they can be comfortable around you enough to give you the tough love, that actually does mean they love you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's all about. I mean, I was telling my son the other day, actually, my 8-year-old, I was saying to him, like, I remember my dad, like, I don't really remember my dad saying to me, like, you had a great game. Like there was times when I scored like a hat trick and I'd be like, how do you think I played? And he'd be like, yeah, you played well, but you didn't do this so well. Like, and I was like, I scored a hat trick. But again, it was that tough love. And he was doing that because, again, he was making me like want to always do better. Because as soon he knew me, he knew that if I got into that comfort zone, I'd start going through the motions because I feel like I've done it. So he knew that, and he never gave me like kind of the praise that I wanted. He gave me that tough love that I needed.
Well, the comfort zone is a comfortable place for a reason. And like we said before, sometimes being really uncomfortable actually pushes you into some of the most amazing things ever for you.
Yeah.
And changes you as a person.
And that's what I mean. I feel like I am a changed person. I feel like I'm much more responsible. I'm much more open to criticism. I'm more, especially from, again, those loved ones, I'm much more open to people giving me advice. Whereas before I'd be like, what do you know? What do you know?
Look who we're talking to.
How can you tell me something when I'm here and you're there? You can't, like that. That was kind of the way I looked at things when I was young. But again, I think it's important that you can have conversations with people and show vulnerability to people, whether it's a condition, whether you're having a tough time in your career or your job or whatever you want. It's just really important to be able to vent to someone because it always makes you feel better in the end.
Yeah, it really does. It really, really does. And then coming towards the end of your career, how was that transition of not being per se, deep as a footballer anymore?
I tell you what was funny, Talia, is that when I left QPR, I think I was like 30, was I 30 or 31 or something like that. And I remember thinking to myself, what am I going to do? Because like, this is the end of my career. And, not many people play, mid 30s, late 30s. Not many people do. And if they do, it's not for the right reasons, I don't think. I think it's for reasons like you haven't made enough money in the game, so you've got to carry on. Or, what else am I going to do? For me, I always played football from start to finish because I love football. You call me up next week and say, I need you to come Power League to come play football. What time I got to be there? Like, I love football to this day. I love it. I love watching it. I love being a part of it. I love everything about it. But going to Asia right at the end, it was probably in my whole career, going to Arsenal was the best decision I made because I got the best education of football. Arsene Wenger got hold of me and turned me into a real technical player. Going to Cardiff was the second best decision I ever made. And it was perfect timing because I had a great manager and coaches around him. I met a great bunch of guys, the rest of the players, my teammates. And I had a platform where I could build. I had good teammates around me. And then my third best decision was going to Japan. It was the best decision I ever made because I got to see a culture that I would never be able to see before. It gave me longevity in my football career because when you're playing football in England and you get the wrong side of 30, when you start 31, 32, you get offered like 1-year deals with a 1-year extension. And if you speak to any footballer, no footballer wants a 1-year deal because it gives you no security at all. If you go and get injured, you know, like you injured your knee, what's that, like 12 months? You know, so if you've got a year contract and you get that injury and you're out for a whole year, the likelihood is you're not going to get another one. And then everyone else will look at you and be like, we're not sure because he's just like ruptured his, you know, his Achilles, or he's just ruptured his ACL. It's hard to get a contract. So me going to Japan was like a blessing in disguise, because straight away they was like, we'll give you 2 years plus one, your option based upon appearances. So I was like, this is great. I went there, first season, scored 20 goals. Great. Really embraced their culture, the people, the way they lived, like everything. My thought process was, I'm gonna go there and live like a Japanese person would, be like a Japanese person, embrace their culture completely. And because I did that, they really took me in. They really embraced me. I think the last person that went to Japan before me was Gary Lineker, which is, you know, a long time. Not many English people have gone and played in Japan. So for me to go there and be really successful, it was great. And there was a difference as well when I went there. You know, when I said I moved to Coventry, that was tough. I moved to Italy, another country, that was tough. When I went to Japan, it wasn't tough at all, because I've built that mental toughness now. I know how to deal with it. I know what's coming. So the transition for me to go from England to Japan, it was the easiest thing ever. The only thing was, obviously, I didn't have no idea about the language, but they gave you a translator. That was funny as well. That was a funny story, because I met my translator. I had a translator straight away. And I remember, like, he was a really nice guy, but his Japanese wasn't good enough where he could translate exactly what I was saying. So I was like in a situation where I was like, really nice guy, but I need another translator, because I think in Japan, especially Japan with their culture, they need to understand exactly everything I'm saying, because it's the other way as well. Like, they want me to understand exactly what they're saying to me as well. So we went out one time to an Irish pub in Japan, and got talking, obviously with some of my teammates, but I got talking to this guy, and he was an English guy from Birmingham. And I was like, oh, what's going on, mate? How comes you're here? And he's like, oh, when I was at uni, I met a Japanese girl, and, you know, we ended up getting married, and I moved to Japan. I was like, so you're fluent in Japanese? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you fancy a job? And he was working at international school at the time. And he was like, job was what? And I was like, be my translator. And he was like, for the football? I was like, yeah. Do you want to be my translator? You can start next week. I just need to double check it with the club. And he was like, the club was like, yeah, no problem. And then, you know, he was like, yeah. So he left the school. But now he's worked in football for like, I don't know, the last, what, 8 years or something like that.
So you have no idea who you're going to meet in the Irish pubs.
You don't know, exactly. And they're everywhere as well.
They're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Every country. And then just a few things then before we do wrap up. Did you ever have a case of, who am I if I don't have football, once the career came to an end?
No, I didn't have that. That's one thing I never had. I never wanted to let football define me. And I was privileged because I moved around. I moved to different countries. My friends that I grew up with, one in particular, Cheeks, he moved to Barcelona. He's a very successful businessman. But I never had a problem networking. I always felt comfortable stepping in every room. I don't know everything, but I know, you know, a little bit about a lot of things. You know, I read a lot, and, you know, now I listen a lot. But now a lot of my friends, good friends, are not actually in football. It's funny because football is one of those sports, one of those games where you meet loads of people, and, you know, a lot of them are good people, but they're more like acquaintances, colleagues, than friends. You know, like there's players that I've played with, you know, for 3 years that I haven't spoken to since I left the football club, you know. So they're not your friends, they're just people you know. And when you see each other, you're like, how's it going, mate? You know, blah, blah, blah. It's great, but they're not real friends. But like now, you know, I done loads. Even like when I was in I was in Japan in COVID, so we couldn't go out. I was like, what am I gonna do? And you know, you can only watch so much Netflix and Prime, and so I was like, I'm gonna do a course, right? So I remember I was looking online, and I was like, what should I do a course in? Like I like property, all these kind of things. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I want to do a course in economics. So I went on the thing, and I signed up for this course with LSE, London School of Economics, and it was like a 12 weeks course or something like that. But I haven't picked up a pencil or a pen since I left since I left school when I was 16. I passed all my exams when I was at school, but I hadn't picked up and you know, and studied or anything like that since I left school. So like for me, it was very much like I want to try and better myself. I want to try and do something else. But because I'd done something else, when I stepped into the room and I heard these kind of conversations coming up, it was about the economics of, you know, the I don't know, housing or property or whatever it may be, I could have like a proper conversation with someone because I've studied it now.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, football never defined me. It was just a platform to, you know, football never defined me in terms of I did what I wanted to do and I did it to the best I could do it, even with my setbacks and even with the challenges I had in my earlier career. But it gave me a platform to meet other interesting people in different walks of life. So yeah, it was always easy for me to like network and talk and stuff.
And then finally, I just want to ask, you were saying earlier how, you know, things that happened in your life ended up shaping you and took you on to the next part of your life. And, you know, moving here, you met your wife and et cetera, et cetera. What advice would you give to somebody then if they are deep in a setback, deep in a challenge, and they genuinely don't see any way out?
That's a deep question, Talia. It's a good question. Well, definitely the first thing I would say is find that person that you do feel comfortable speaking to. Find that person that can communicate with you and give you that tough love and support that you need to help get yourself out of that dark place. But then for me personally, what always worked was even in them dark places that you might be, what's the positive? What's the light in that dark place that can help get you out of that dark place? And that's what I always held on to. So for me, when I was in the dark place in football, my light place was, well, I've got the ability. That's one thing I'm always going to have. Let me hold on to that. Let me start, you know, working towards it. Change that little bit here because I know I've got this bit to get me to that bit, you know, and that's what I would say to people, you know, hold on to that little bit of light, focus on the positives to get you out. And then once you feel yourself moving in a better direction, keep that consistency and keep it moving. Don't get complacent. Don't stagnate. You know, keep on giving yourself goals, targets. Keep on pushing forward.
There is always that tiny, tiny glimmer of light or hope,
Always.
even in the darkest of spaces.
Yeah, and that's what really helped me, because there was times where I was like, damn man, like my career is like looking really bleak at the moment. What can I do? You know, and then sometimes it might just be a sign. That's the thing. Sometimes something might come to you and you're like, that's going to help me think differently. Let me try it. And then, you know, obviously you end up step by step, pulling yourself out of that dark place and moving forward again and getting yourself back on track. But I always feel like the most important thing when you're in dark times is your support system, is your support group, those loved ones around you that you can turn to in your hour of need. You just need to build, you know, again, there's never going to be lots of those, but them good ones that you find, keep close to you. because they're going to help at some point in your life, and I'm sure you will help them at some point in their life too.
100%, 100%. And that tiny glimmer of hope, that tiny spark of light, once you find it, because sometimes you can't find it, you can't see it, but it is there. And you said sometimes it's just a sign. And when you feel it and you suddenly see it, even if it's tiny, it will slowly, slowly grow more and more and more.
Yeah, it will manifest, and that's what it's all about. You know, again, I always say it sounds easy as well.
Oh yeah.
It sounds easy. It's not easy, but that, and it might not come to you. You know, you might be in a dark place for a while, but you have to keep looking for that piece of light. That's the thing, and that's the, you know, the glass half full. You've got to keep looking for the light. How can I get myself out of this position? Because if you just give up, then, you know, you're never going to enjoy life again. And, you know, we only get one life on this planet, so you have to make the most of it while you're here.
100%. And it's okay to be in that dark space for a while. It's okay to be in it and not have that tiny light for a while. Because sometimes we do just have to feel our emotions, and we really have to sit with them, however, you know, we deal with them. But eventually there does come a time when either someone tells you or you have to feel it yourself, and you have to begin to get yourself out of it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, like I said, I had that with me when I was at Wolves. That was a painful time, man. That wasn't like something that just I got over after a week or so. That was like, you know, a few months. You know, that was about 3 or 4 months. So yeah, it would have been like from June until like September. You know, so it was a few months, and it was tough. It was tough. But for me, it gave me that mental toughness. It built character. It showed me that I can bounce back. You know, I held on to that little glimmer of light. That glimmer of light was, I'm talented. You know, I just have to change this. And that's why I was always able to like strive. You know, and I like that. I say strive for greatness, but everyone's measurement of greatness is different, right? And that's important. Great doesn't always mean you're going to be the best in the world. But for example, from my point of view, where I was, where the manager of Wolves is trying to sell me to a team like Shrewsbury and people like Carlisle and people like that, to then 3 years later playing for England, you know, that's me striving for greatness. Like I reached the top, even though I was close to like letting everything fall. And I always just hold on to that glimmer of hope.
I was going to say, how did you get yourself out of that then?
It was very much that, you know, hard work. You said hard work trumps everything. If you keep working hard, at some point that's going to pay off. And then when it does pay off, it gives you so much pleasure. It really does. You know, think about that. Think about it when you go to the gym in the morning at like 6 in the morning, you're like, it's tough. I don't really want to go. But then you go and you finish your session, however long it may be, and you come out of the gym thinking, that was amazing. That's what it's like when, you know, in a football career where it's not like, you know, you're not having an hour session and straight away you feel great, but it can feel great if you just stick with it. Consistency is everything in life, in every career, in every job. Consistent. If you're consistently doing something 100% and working your hard to the best of your ability, I believe at some point it will pay off. If you're in that dark period in your life, at some point you're going to be able to pull yourself back out, because it's hope and it's those little things that you can hold on to that can help you. And that's what I believe in.
Having that little bit of hope is really important too.
Yeah.
And then just quickly, only because you just touched upon it, what happened with Wolves for it to go so bad?
You know what's funny? I would actually, you know, one day if I see him or if I decide to like reach out, I would actually like to know for myself. I don't really know. I've heard bits and bobs. I'm not sure if they're true. I know from my point of view, like, I don't feel like I've done nothing wrong. Listen, if I was doing what I was doing then, now, I definitely wouldn't be doing nothing wrong. But maybe at that time, maybe I was just ahead of my time. Maybe I was just, you know, I was that kind of cocky kid. I remember, like, it was very much, I do remember one thing. He said, Mick McCarthy said to me, I drove in one day and I had a Bentley and I drove in and I had my music loud and I pulled up and got out and he was like, do you need to have your music that loud? I was like, yeah, I like it. Like that. And then he was like, you probably shouldn't, drive that car in because you're not setting a good example to the younger players. And I went, really? I said, I look at it like I am showing a good example because I'm working hard, I'm scoring goals, and I'm able to buy a car like this. And I think maybe that he took that as like me being cocky, and maybe it was, but I just thought it was a stupid question because ultimately you pay me money, I'll spend what I want on it. But if I want to buy something with it, why does it matter? Why does that bother you? You know? But I don't know. I'm just guessing. Maybe one day I'll speak to him at some point. But to be honest, the way I look at it is that man tried to ruin my career. I think he made a conscious effort to try and ruin my career. And that's what makes me upset because in that moment as well, players don't have a voice. Players are always in the wrong. Um, and we don't have a platform to speak on. Like there was an issue not too long ago with Jadon Sancho and I forgot the name of the manager now, the Man United manager with the ball dead. Forgot his name. You know what I'm talking about, right? And he spoke publicly about Jadon Sancho in a negative way. Jadon Sancho then responds publicly because he has. And I'm saying to myself, why is Jadon Sancho wrong? He's just protecting himself. He's just sticking up for himself. If you didn't want him to speak publicly, you shouldn't have spoke publicly. But in that moment, the media and everyone looked at Jadon Sancho like he's the bad guy. And actually, it was a manager. And that's very much what happened to me. Like fans thought I was the problem. But actually, he was the problem. He was treating me a certain way. But they don't know about that. And they didn't know about it, especially then, because there wasn't social media. I didn't have a platform to speak publicly. The only time I could speak is if I got asked to do an interview. But when you're not playing, they're not going to ask you to do an interview. So the only people that could speak was him. And he can say whatever he wants to say, and people will just believe him. So that's why I dislike that man. I don't hate nobody, but I dislike him just because I felt like he just tried to ruin my career.
You know what? You've not let anything that you've spoken about today define you in your career, in your life, and it's almost consistently given you fuel to just keep going.
Yeah, and that's what my career and my life been all about, really. I grew up in humble beginnings. We didn't have we wasn't wealthy. We wasn't even middle class. We didn't have much, but we made the most of it. And throughout my career and my life, I've always had them setbacks. Some of them my fault. I hold my hands up. I definitely was not a saint. I definitely was high maintenance. I was a problem sometimes, but it wasn't always my fault. And there was times when I was provoked. And there's times when, someone might have started something and, I might have finished it. And then I end up getting in trouble when someone else brought the problem to my doorstep, But ultimately, I've always looked at it like the first thing you said there, the first question, what advice would you give? When you said that quote, what you said, which I thought was a beautiful quote, by the way. I had loads of setbacks. I got knocked down so many times. But again, what was always installed to me was you got to get back up and you got to keep fighting for what you want. And that's what I always did. And even now, like I don't work I'm not a footballer no more. I'm retired, but I work on TV. And there's times when, you might feel like, oh, I missed out on that opportunity, but you can't dwell on it. You just got to keep going. You got to keep improving it as an individual. And that's what I try to do all the time now. Like, if I can improve just like 0.1% every single day, I'm happy with that.
That's all it is, 0.1% every single day. I agree with you.
Exactly.
I agree. Well, it's been amazing having you on. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you for being here today. Life will knock us down, sometimes hard,
and sometimes more than once. And when it feels impossible, know that your story isn't over yet. Sometimes when everything is falling apart, it's really falling into place. You have the power to rise, to heal, to make magic, and to evolve. And you have the power inside you. We all do. You have the power to get back up.